And I would also like to commend Senator Chairman Enzi and Chairman Price for their hard work on this. And this like Congressman Rokita said, this is a rare moment. Shouldn't be, but it is. I guess I would really take the position of the glass half full as opposed to the glass half empty, as Senator Whitehouse just said. He mentioned a number of areas of bipartisanship breaking out in the Senate. That's a good thing. And quite honestly, even in the Senate markup of this budget, there are an awful lot of areas of agreement. 5 of them were amendments that I offered. And I'm stalling a little bit for time as we pass out some handouts here, because I'm going to do something a little unusual in this budget conference opening statement. I'm going to start looking at some numbers. And Congressman Rokita mentioned the fact that we have difficult choices. And we really want to solve problems as opposed to just demagogue issues. And the way you solve problems is there's a first step that you have to take. You have to admit you have one. You have to properly define it. And I realize our budget process is really centered around a 10-year budget window, but that's not the problem. It is a problem, but it isn't the problem. The proper definition of the problem really is we have a 30-year demographic problem, and on a bipartisan basis, this Congress has made promises to all kinds of Americans, and we haven't made provision to pay for them. We can't honor all those promises, not with a balanced budget. So I think the proper way of looking at our problem, the proper definition, to enable America to collectively admit we have it. And this is what I hope, certainly the amendments that I offered that were passed on a bipartisan basis in our budget process, I hope those get adopted by this conference, is to provide the information to the American people to properly define the problem. So I'll just have you take a look at the first page on my handout here. This is the 30-year projected deficit according to CBO's alternate fiscal scenario. And I've done it by decade. So you see the first decade, about $8 trillion of projected deficits. The second decade, $31 trillion. The third decade, $88 trillion, for a whopping total of $127 trillion of deficits over the next 30 years. Now, that's massive. And I put, just for perspective, the entire net private asset base of America today is $110 trillion. Now, just in case you're thinking that this is just pie in the sky and way too large, I realize these projections, there's a range. And I don't have time to go through all the graphs, but the White House had a projection. CBO has a baseline. We had our own Senate projection. I'm showing you the CBO alternate fiscal scenario, but take a look at the percentages of GDP spending as relationship to the last 20-year average. You could argue that these projections are still low when it comes to defense spending and other programs. It's got to be a concern, and if you take a look at the yellow line here on the percentage GDP chart, you can see that if alternate fiscal scenario by CBO comes true, our debt to GDP ratio in 30 years would be 224%. That's a problem. Want to quick show the defense spending as a percentage of GDP, because I hear all the time, well, it's defense spending, it's funding of the wars that have caused these massive deficits. Well, historically, we're still at a pretty low rate of defense spending as relationship to GDP. We need to actually look at the facts. We need to look at the figures. If we're going to solve problems, we have to understand the truth as opposed to demagoguery. The last point I want to make, and this was another amendment that we did pass by unanimous consent, and truthfully, I believe it was some members on the Democratic side. I think it was Senator Kaine and Senator Warner, that when I was looking for Democrat sponsors, we compromised. I've got this one-page income statement that really lays it out, and CBO hopefully will start putting this, rather than four-inch thick document, in one page we can pretty well lay out the financial situation of America, so it's pretty understandable. And Senator Warner and Senator Kaine wanted to make sure that we put tax expenditures. So we'll include tax expenditures. That's a vital piece of information we should take a look at if we're going to solve these problems. So I would just direct my colleagues' attention to a one-year income statement. It shows outlays, revenue, deficits. Those are the rows. The columns, you see the first 2 columns are Social Security and Medicare. And I actually direct you to the second page, which is the 30-year alternate fiscal scenario put into one page. You'll see that Social Security over the next 30 years will pay out about $15 trillion more in benefits than takes in the payroll tax. That's a problem. Medicare will pay out about $35 trillion more in benefits over the next 30 years than takes in the payroll tax. Now, that's about $50 trillion of that $127 trillion 30-year deficit. The remaining problem is $71 trillion worth of interest payments. So again, on one page, We show where we're spending our money. We show where we're getting our income, and we show where the deficits are really occurring. Kind of directs our activity. So again, I hope that this budget conference adopts that amendment, so we actually start showing the American people the truth. We lay out the reality, because that's what you have to do if you're going to solve a problem. You have to first admit we've got one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.